All right, so some people haven't been handling the Trump assassination attempt very well, specifically the people that really hate him. They've been having meltdowns because they're upset that the guy missed, and they also probably realize now Trump has more support than ever because of it. So for some people, this was like the worst thing ever, and seeing Trump do a fist pump in front of the American flag after getting shot in the ear was just way too much for them to handle. And of course, they feel like they have to say something about it, which is a terrible idea. Like we just saw with Jack Black and Kyle Gass, things have not been going very well for them since the assassination attempt, and that might have ended Tenacious D because, of course, they hate Trump and they had a show the day after everything. So I'm sure beforehand they're all pissed off and getting all worked up about it. And during the show, they're probably thinking about it like crazy as well. So eventually, Kyle, he just couldn't help himself and he had to say something stupid about it. I mean, the guy must have no self control. Like, just don't talk about Trump. It's not that hard, especially after what just happened, But of course, he's all emotional about it. And he just let it get to him on his birthday, too. It's sad. This guy spent his whole birthday obsessing over Trump to the point where it might have ended Tenacious D, it might have destroyed his career, and it ended the tour for good. So he screwed up massively here, and people around him should have been telling him, like, please just don't bring it up on stage. I know you hate Trump. I know you're all worked up about this, but just don't mention it on stage. It's not going to help at all, which I doubt anybody really did. But now it's going to cost him. So during the show, they're celebrating his birthday, and they brought out a cake and told him to make a wish. And of course, all he's thinking about is Donald Trump.
Happy birthday, make a wish, Canada. Don't miss Trump next time. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was really smart. I mean, I don't know how he thought that was a good idea. It's crazy. I mean, even if you're somebody that's like, oh, he's just joking around, it's not that serious, you should still be able to admit that the guy's just an idiot for putting himself in this position. Like, how is saying that going to be worth it? And, the guy's job is to play music, not to give controversial statements about Donald Trump being assassinated. And he had to know it was going to be divisive and controversial. So to put everything at risk just to say something that isn't necessary at all is just embarrassing. And it's really selfish too, because now all the people they employ, like all the people that go on tour with them and work for them, all get screwed over by this as well. And same thing with the fans. Like, they had a bunch of sold out shows coming up that they canceled, and they also announced that all future Tenacious D projects are on hold. So I'm sure their fans are pissed about this. All this is happening just because Kyle couldn't control himself and had to say something about Donald Trump. It's hilarious. So they're in Australia touring when this happened, and a senator there called for them to be deported. And then a bunch of people were just sharing this video and talking about how disgusted they are with it. And eventually Kyle's agency dropped him. And both Kyle and Jack made statements about it. Jack said, I was blindsided by what was said at the show on Sunday. I would never condone hate speech or encourage political violence in any form. After much reflection, I no longer feel it is appropriate to continue the Tenacious D tour, and all future creative plans are on hold. I am grateful to the fans for their support and understanding. Yeah, so it seems like he's just trying to save face here. And, he must have gotten a lot of backlash, and there must have been a lot of pressure on him to distance himself from Kyle. Because I doubt Jack really cares about what Kyle said. I'm sure before the show they're saying much worse about Trump. And also, it sounded like Jack agreed with him. I think his response was thank you. So that doesn't really sound like somebody who was blindsided by what was said. So now fans are pissed at Jack too, because they feel like he's kind of just throwing his friend under the bus to save his own career. Like, I saw this tweet that has almost 40,000 likes. They said, you're upset at Jack Black because of what Kyle Gass said. I'm upset at Jack Black for turning his back on a 30-year-long partnership for the sake of keeping his celebrity status. Yeah, so that's not going to be a good look for him either, because, again, he doesn't disagree with what Kyle said. I mean, he's probably just annoyed with him because he said it on stage and because he got a ton of backlash. So he's trying his best just to separate from it and separate from Kyle, and act like what he said was just completely out of line and unexpected. So some people think he's leaving Kyle out to dry and he's overreacting. He could have just continued the tour and they didn't need to really address it. Maybe just an apology would have been fine. But, Jack, he definitely is playing it safe, because he's obviously worried about this affecting other stuff in his career, and he doesn't really need Tenacious D. He has enough other stuff going on, I'm sure. So cutting that was definitely a PR move, and he's just trying to remove himself from the situation as best as possible, which people are obviously going to be mad about, but it probably was a smart move. And also, I'd imagine Jack and Kyle probably aren't on the best terms. Like, I'd imagine they're having arguments about this because even though it sounded like Jack agreed with what Kyle said, Kyle is the one that said it, and he put everything at risk by doing that. And obviously, the headlines are going to mention Jack Black, like just because he's the big name there. So it's mostly going to reflect on him. And also, I think recently he hosted a fundraiser for Joe Biden. So I'm sure there's some pressure from his team for Jack to make a statement about it. I doubt they want to be tied to this. It's a bad look. So Kyle, he just put everybody in a shitty situation with this. And he did give an apology. And he said, "The line I improvised on stage Sunday night in Sydney was highly inappropriate, dangerous, and a terrible mistake. I don't condone violence of any kind in any form against anyone. What happened was a tragedy, and I'm incredibly sorry for my severe lack of judgment. I profoundly apologize to those I've let down and truly regret any pain I've caused." Yeah, and this guy, he's nowhere near the celebrity Jack Black is. So without Tenacious D, he's going to be in some trouble. Like, it's going to be tough to come back from this. It's kind of like the Kathy Griffin situation where she held up that severed Donald Trump head and she thought people were just going to find it funny, and it ended up basically destroying her career. So I guess Kyle didn't learn from that, and he let his hatred for Donald Trump get the best of him. And on his own birthday, he basically let it ruin his life, all because he couldn't keep his birthday wish to himself. Like, he just had to say it out loud. I mean, he probably knew it wasn't going to be a good idea, but I'm sure he's just thinking of Trump the whole day, and it's his birthday, so he's probably pissed that Trump ruined it. By the end of the night, he just had to let it out, which turned out to be a huge mistake. But I feel like we might see some people defend him. It'd be interesting to see how comedians react to this, because obviously they're usually like, oh, nothing's off limits, you can make a joke out of anything. Like Ari Shaffir, for example, I could see him defending Kyle, but I don't know if he'll really go out of his way to do it. I don't know if he cares enough to. And also, he hates getting involved in politics, and I'm sure he just hates that Kyle would bring up politics at his show. So he might not give his opinion on this, but I'm sure some other comedians will. So I wonder what they'll say about it. But either way, Kyle, it's going to be tough to come back from this, because he obviously needs Jack Black way more than Jack needs him, and Jack is just going to want to stay away from him for a while. And Tenacious D could come back at some point, when people start to forget about this and things blow over. But who knows? Jack could just be done with it. It might not even be worth the headache for him, which is unfortunate for Kyle, because that's definitely the biggest thing he had going. But it's crazy that he'd want to put that at risk by making some stupid, unnecessary comment about Trump. So he clearly was not thinking. But let me know what you guys think about it all. And then make sure you check out my Patreon account. I have a new episode coming out tomorrow. It should be a good one about the most recent Kill Tony. There's a lot to talk about from that. And there's just a ton of other stuff on Patreon. I talk about the time Tim Dillon humbled Whitney Cummings, the degeneracy of Ari Shaffir, and some of the cringiest Joe Rogan Experience episodes. So there's a lot to go through, over 80 videos. Make sure you check it out. Put a link in the description.